If you've been walking through grief or loss and it's caught you off guard, you're wanting some more tools to move through it with grace. I just had the most incredible conversation with my dear friend and client and grief expert, Reverend Jenn Cormier. And I asked her if there was any possible way we could get the video footage and play it for you. It's full of tools and heartfelt stories of how I've processed and used my own grief to really go further in my own spiritual path and self-expression and my purpose and my business and open my heart even more. I hope it serves. And whatever you're going through, I'm sending so much love.
Welcome to this very special episode of the Walk Through Grief with Grace podcast. Today is a love story episode, and I am bringing on my business mentor, who I've been working with for almost 4 years. She is a brilliant human being, Sage Lavine, and it's really an honor and a pleasure to have this moment to speak with you about your journey, personal and professional, with grief and how it's transformed you and the way that you move in the world. So thank you for making the time, Sage.
You're so welcome. And thank you for being a woman who stands for healthy grieving. Thank you for all the work that you've done on yourself, Jen, to be who you are and sit in your seat with all the keys on the keyboard of your expression. And I just want to thank you and every one of you that's listening and showing up in this space. It's such a sacred space.
Yeah, it really is. And I just have realized just this week that grief work really is soul work. And it really opens the way and clears the way for us to really land in our full potential for creativity and in purpose. And that's, you really take a stand for women finding their purpose and coming into their full power. So, and it's wild because you are this founder and CEO of Women Rocking Business. I think it's over 400,000 women entrepreneurs that you reach over the world. You're a best-selling author of Women Rocking Business, the book. And with all of your notable, if I read your bio, it's like Microsoft headquarters. We've worked with NPR and Apple and Fox and, all of these amazing platforms. I just honor and respect so much your humility and also your capacity to touch so many of us with your whole heart. So I really think that this is an amazing love story because it's about becoming fully ourselves and falling in love with our businesses and the work that we do in the world and being unapologetic in really being visible and being in service in the biggest way. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, Sage, I'd love to drop in for a moment to just give you the space because I think people that know you know that you've gone through a couple of major initiations that were big losses in your life. First with your divorce, and then secondly with your father. We have that in common. And I'd love to just give you the space to share a little bit about your personal story.
Absolutely. I'll start out by saying that I want to acknowledge any of you that are here actively seeking out answers around your grief. For most of us, we weren't taught to grieve. So it just says a lot about this group. When I got divorced, I don't need to go into the details. We were really growing apart, and that was heartbreaking because we had been together for 10 years. And nobody had taught me to grieve. And so I wasn't anticipating feeling so emotionally naked, like somebody had just ripped an umbilical cord out of my solar plexus. I felt like I was flapping in the wind and didn't have skin and didn't know where to begin. And I realized that every relationship that we're in this life is like a container, and it holds us right up until it doesn't. And then we build a new container and we end up in this liminal space, right? Where we're kind of between worlds. And when we get plunged into that depth of grief, I think we end up grieving all the griefs. And you and I have talked about this. It's not just this loss, then it's all the losses. And we revisit the darkness of our soul, and we need to. because I really believe we're actually living in a world that there's a darkness deficiency. So many of us are seeking the light with such momentum that we forget we need to be in the dark. We need to go into the roots. We need to go down where seeds are planted. Seeds can't sprout without that darkness, that holding of the soil. And I remember going to one of my spiritual teachers with so much confusion and devastation and this feeling of hopelessness and like I might never be happy again. And I had been following him for years, and he always talked about asking questions to open up your consciousness. And he had helped me in so many ways to really open up and trust the universe. And I remember asking him after studying with him for many, many, many hours, like, what about grief? And he said, his answer literally was, what about it? You have to make time to grieve. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been following you for years. I've sat with you for, I've logged 200-300 hours with you, and you haven't once said anything about grief. And I see that with complete respect for him. But I just believe that we're living in a time where we need to be talking about this part of life. Like, we need to be preparing people so that they don't end up in this feeling of loss. And then, oh my God, in this loss, there must be something wrong with me because I don't even know who I am anymore. And that's just not what's true. What's true is that you get to experience grief, and we all go through it. And there's an opportunity for an incredible amount of holding and receiving and falling apart and then falling back together when we can prepare ourselves that that's what it's going to be. And so I tell you that story because I dragged myself around for weeks. I mean, I was a mess. I was a wet, hot mess. I was supposed to be leading a retreat in Bali. I think you've heard that story. I almost canceled the retreat. My dear friend Heather Houston, who's a singer-songwriter who was going to be bringing the gift of song into this retreat, had to come to my house and pack my suitcase for me. And, all of this magic unfolded in me just surrendering to, okay, this is going to be like a very wet, tender, fragile, vulnerable experience to go lead my very first real retreat that I had ever led. And, the magic that unfolded, we ended up getting connected to a women's organization over there, and we raised tens of thousands of dollars to help women and children in Bali escape abusive situations. And all of this magic unfolded. And I remember by the end of all of that, realizing that, yes, I was going to need to learn to grieve, but I didn't want to get stuck there, because I knew that the deeper roots that I had put into place in the depth of that grief, feeling so dark, and having my loved ones turn toward me rather than turn away from me, made me even more committed to a sense of purpose. When we are truly on purpose, that never goes away. It can change form, but that is the limitless, that is the most anchored form of, I think, grounded in our being that we can be. And that's, of course, where Women Rocking Business and my business comes from, but so much more comes from that sense of purpose. My sense of purpose in being a change maker, a woman, a partner to my fiance, all of that is wrapped up in that sense of purpose, because our purpose goes deeper. And it gave me an even greater conviction to say, yes, I will grieve, I will lose, we all will, but yet I commit to not letting that grief derail me from bringing love into the world. In fact, I want it to be a part of the cycle of death and regrowth, right? I'm a permaculture person, I'm a gardener, I'm an ecology person. I used to be a wilderness guide. And so looking at nature to watch what happens when nature dies and then gets composted and becomes reborn. And, Jen, I know you and I have very similar beliefs around this. And that whole experience, losing my husband because of the divorce, it felt like a huge loss. And then recommitting to my spiritual path and coming out even stronger gave me such an advantage when my dad died suddenly. And so I can tell you that story next, but I just want to pause because I think there's just so much in us preparing ourselves, body, mind, and spirit, for these losses that we will inevitably face in our life.
Yeah. And what you're speaking to about the derailing, I think there's such a fear that if I move with this grief, if I allow it, in my being, I'm going to fall apart and I'll never come back together and it will derail me. So therefore, I need to just keep going and push through. And I see that, manifest itself in all kinds of illness and addiction. And instead, what you're sharing is, no, you can come all the way undone. And then what comes after that is an even stronger recommitment to your work, which is what I've benefited from in seeing you as someone who's so on purpose and so clear and powerful in your leadership. So I think that that's a really beautiful message for the collective to say, yeah, we have to go into the dark. And that, the spiritual teacher that you're talking about, I think we can get so fixated on the light and staying positive. And yeah, we can train our mind in all these, spiritual ways and sing mantra and, dance and get outside in nature and do all of those amazing things for our spirit. And sometimes we just got to go all the way down in the darkness, and seeds are not going to grow, without the compost.
I just remember him saying that to me in front of a room full of like 400 people. He said, of course there's grief. You have to make time to grieve. And I'm thinking, well, thank you so much for telling me. I'm glad I got the memo. Like, right? I just hope that we all heard that part of the story. You do need to make time to grieve when the losses come, when the energy comes. And I was talking to my girlfriend about this morning because I think there's kind of 3 inroads to our work on the planet. There's body, mind, spirit. We can enter at any point. Some of us are really good at shifting the mindset stuff, but we might not be as good at accessing the body or vice versa, or the spirituality. And I think we need all 3 gateways in to be able to really move the amount of energy that needs to move for us to be in our greatness. Because, I believe, like many of us do, that I think women are a big part of the solution to what the planet's going through. The feminine is a big part of the solution. We've been over energized in the masculine, and the feminine is emerging more and more. And with all of the shifting that's happening, I think we're not just grieving the losses of our human family or of the health setbacks or the ways that our careers can fall apart, our kids leave for college, all the things, but there's an eco grief that many of us have to process ongoingly, but we don't want to get caught there, right? There's a higher divine oneness. Every single one of you listening is a sacred being. You are sacred. You are holy. You are a vessel for the divine. And that knowingness allows us to stay willing and open enough to keep going in the face of grief, because we don't want to get stuck there. Right? When you're walking through hell, don't stop. Keep walking. And what I love about what you just said, Jen, is that I know for me, the fear that going into the grief would have me fall apart and never come back, that was true for me too. And so I learned to start recreating a container. And I would invite any of you who are really walking through it, I would invite you to really think about what does my new container look like? Who are my allies? Who can I be myself with? Who are the allies that can be with me when I walk into the dark alley, right? What do I put in place? Because I literally used to text a friend and say, I'm going in. I have about an hour. I'm going to be doing some grief work. Can I check in with you when I come out? Because I just needed to know, all of a sudden I was living alone. All of a sudden I was working alone, right? And then COVID hit and I was so isolated. And I just needed to know that somebody was tracking me, that I wasn't going to disappear into oblivion. And I just want to say to any of you who think that you can just get through this on your own, I say this with total love, but that's stupid. Don't try to get through it on your own. The whole point of the death portal opening is so we can be reminded of who else is still here and the relationship that we still have with that person on the other side. And to think that we're going to be so independent in these moments will also flip us into our totally codependent patterns. They're 2 sides of the same coin, but in the middle is our interdependence. And that's where we need to learn to be as leaders, as conscious humans, as humans doing their work, as purposeful beings. For many of you, I know you're on a leadership journey. We need to learn what interdependence means, because we do need each other. We are woven into a tapestry of humans who are not meant to be doing any of this alone, and with the world changing and so many of us living on our own, we have to learn how to reweave and create those connections and create those group text threads and really have each other's backs. And in that, not just asking, but then showing up. Some of us have to relearn how to actually show up for each other. Some of my friends have faced a really devastating scenario this morning, and I moved my meetings around and I'm hosting a Zoom call for them. And what do you guys need? And, do you need to come be in my house for a few days? It's like, that's what it means to show up and be a friend. Like, you don't just say you're a friend when it's convenient, you are a friend. And I think some of us need to learn how to be that so that we have that kind of network built up around us so that when the losses happen, we're just immediately caught. There's not that we will do some falling, but that we won't fall very far because we've actually put the energy and the attention on the relationships with people who care that much.
It's so important, Sage. And what I'm hearing you say is that the relationships you've cultivated and all of your spiritual practice you've cultivated, everything you did moving through that portal of your divorce strengthened you. The analogy I'm making is kind of about the immune system, right? When we're healthy and we're strong in our body and we've built up a healthy immune system over years, it's harder to get taken all the way down by, the next virus or something coming along. And I think if we build that web of, social holding, and I love this, the different containers that hold us over different parts of our lives, when that container dissolves of the relationship, the parent, the job, the whatever it is, when that dissolves, what other container is going to be there to catch you? And I think that is essential, especially if we're stepping into more, circles of leadership. And what I'm hearing you say is that really helped you when you went into that next portal, when you lost your dad, that you were able to continue to be a leader.
Yeah. And for any of you who ever feel that way, like, I don't know who would be there for me when so-and-so passes away, or I don't know who's there for me now, or you don't feel like you have that, that would be my invitation to you to really choose 2 or 3 relationships that you want to go all in on and let that person know, you're one of my best friends. I want you to know, like, you're in my inner circle. Like, I just want to be there for you. I would love for us to be the kind of allies in this life where we're fully there for each other. We're going to continue to need each other more and more with the world changing at the rate it's changing. And when I think about, my dad passing and being in the middle of COVID, it was the last thing that I thought would happen. My dad was 74. He was super healthy. He took 7-mile walks every day. He did have some health complications that I found out after the fact he hadn't looped me in on as much. But my dad took his own life very suddenly in the middle of COVID. And it came as an absolute traumatizing shocker to my entire family. What are you doing? And I don't always share the fact that he took his own life, but I share that here because I think it's an important conversation. I think it's important for all of us. And certainly was for me to just accept that this is a legit decision. He made a completely legitimate decision to step away from his life here. He left me knowing how loved I was by him. Now, back up for a moment, because my dad was an atheist, hardcore. And we used to get in long debates about whether there was a higher power or not. And when my dad passed, I had the benefit of having made a personal study out of grief throughout my divorce, throughout my aunt dying, one of my cousins passing away. I had made a study of grief. And so when I got the news, Jen, I remember everything flashed through my being in that moment. And I realized that how I orchestrated myself in that exact moment of getting the news was going to dictate the months of my life that followed. And I remember there was some part of me that asked myself the question, what if I were to let this ravage through me completely now? And I'm so grateful that my fiance was right there in the kitchen when my brother called. And in fact, my fiance was literally standing behind me like the masculine standing behind me when I got the news. Now, I have a long history of very broken relationships with men in my family. So this was a very healing moment for me to have my fiance right there. But I remember allowing myself to fall completely backwards and fall completely into him. And I just let out this screech, and his arms immediately went around me and we both fell to the floor. And I just let myself have it. I just let myself have it. And then it was like I was, because it had only been an hour or so since he actually passed when I got the news, not even. And so it was like I was literally standing in the portal. And I don't know how much you talk about the death portal, but when someone passes, there is a divine portal that opens for a certain amount of time. And everybody that was close to them has access to the other side, unlike any other moment on the planet. And so I was able to stand in this shower of energy and grief and horrific loss and complete ecstasy all at the same time, because the energy of extreme grief and devastation is actually vibrationally like a cousin to like earth-shattering ecstasy. Like, we don't fully understand what it's like to let go to that degree. And when we can, the emotions, the highs and the like, they all start kind of bleeding together. It's almost like instead of an emotional scale, it's an emotional circle. I'm just saying this for the first time, but it's like I really believe this. And I was blessed enough to know what I needed. And Drew asked, my fiance said, "What can I do?" I said, "Please get everybody you can to join me on Zoom, like now," because we are in the middle of COVID. And many of my friends got the text from Drew and just came to my house. We had been socially distanced for months and they didn't care. Oh my God, Sage lost her dad. We're going to take off our masks and go hold her. So now I have like half my friends in my living room. The other half is on Zoom. And I just got to be held that night because I was brave enough to ask for it. And I just want to encourage every single one of you that's going through a loss to be brave enough to ask. We lit candles, have some kind of a fire. The indigenous people, Native Americans, like they knew when there was a loss, they had a sacred fire. Bring the elements into your experience because you're burning away layers of your karma when we have that kind of a loss. And so you have to support yourself elementally, support yourself by drinking extra water, support yourself by drinking extra electrolytes, lots of protein. Grieving takes energy, y'all. So there I was falling apart. We started singing all of his favorite songs. He sang The Gambler by Kenny Rogers over and over and over again. I'm sobbing. We're all singing the song. Drew gets out his guitar and I finally just passed out and they put me to bed. And I woke up the next morning and remember, my dad was a hardcore atheist. Big debates about whether there was a higher power or not. And as I'm waking up, I'm in this dream and my dad is dancing with me and swinging me around. And he says, "Sage," he was holding my head and he says, "Sage, you're right. It's beautiful here." And there was this music playing in my dream, this most incredible multidimensional frequency music. And as I'm coming awake, I realized that music is actually playing in my room. And it's playing on this old Sonos speaker, which is under my bed, which hasn't been played in 2 years. Sonos speakers, you have to like go through like 18 steps just to get them hooked up to whatever device you want them to freaking play. And they never work when you want them to. And now it's playing the music that I'm hearing in my dream. And I realize it's my dad. And I realize my dad's crossing the wires to play this most incredible music to let me know that he's free. And I got a chance to lay there in my own tears and my own grief. And it was the most spiritually awakened moment of my life. And I've done vision quests and I've fasted for 4 days and I've done ayahuasca and I've sat on the mountain with the guru and I've done all the things. And I never felt so close to the divine as I did laying in the portal that my dad left open for me. And in those moments, I bridged and formed a new relationship with him. He was my best friend. He was this incredible, in his career, he was a professor of library science, and he worked for hospice, and he was this incredible humanitarian, and he was such a good listener. My dad taught me how to listen. And so now I have regular dates with my dad almost every week where I just go listen and I play that music. And sometimes that music comes on without me even pushing the button for it to come on. And a couple of weeks ago, I was down at the beach and I was listening to a different playlist, and whatever happened on my phone, I'm on the beach early in the morning. It's a place where I connect with God, with Goddess, the divine, however you want to say. And his song starts playing. And when I was a little girl, my dad used to give us $2 bills in our stockings. And his song starts playing, and I look down at the beach, and there's a $2 bill on the beach. You can't make this stuff up, y'all. So I just want to say, like, this is the relationship I have with my dad now. He gives me advice all the time. He's still my best spiritual friend. And our relationship is better. It's cleaner because it doesn't have all that human messiness involved in it.
Wow, what a story. I'm so glad you shared all of that with us. And I mean, there's so much magic, just so much magic. And also, I just want to thank you and acknowledge you for sharing, the truth of the fact that he took his life, because suicide is so much more common than we think it is because we don't talk about it. So I know that many folks listening have lost loved ones to suicide, and there's such a stigma around that. So I think revealing that extra layer of truth for everyone, I think is so valuable to hear that, and then to hear about all of these experiences, And I think some people, I've had so many clients and folks I've interviewed that haven't shared those magical, because it's like, they're going to think I'm crazy, if I share this piece. But so beautiful. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I really believe it's in sharing that we heal. Brene Brown says, share the shame. That's the only way to heal. And I think there's so much power for us to be in these conversations, in group conversations, coming together. So much of the trauma that we've all been through got put into place in relationship and in family constellations and things like that. And there's so much healing that happens when we come together and share.
And what would you say, Sage? I know that we both share the belief that grief is so much more than something to get over or get through. Like, I got to get through this grief. And it's brought you so many gifts. Would you just tell us what your personal perspective is on grief now that you've been on the other side of these two major initiations?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that in the cycle of life and death and life and loss, I think that we have the opportunity to open up our hearts more than they've ever been opened before. That's the opportunity. And the opportunity is to become the more open, next, surrendered, expressed, connected version of ourselves. I mean, many of us are here because we want to go all the way in this lifetime. We want to self-actualize. One of the things I do is I help women, especially, or anybody who resonates with a feminine way of doing business. I help people self-actualize through starting a business that makes a difference in the world. Many of us are here because we're on a path of enlightenment, right? Whether it's this lifetime or the next, we want to go all the way. And what that means is releasing all the blockages, Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, right? It's becoming one with the highest of the high. And, grief is a portal into the impermanence of everything. And so this piece that Jenn's pointing to around, what do you need to surrender completely to the grief? What do you need to let go and let the feels move all the way through you? Because the grief comes to wash us clean. And if we really surrender and give ourselves to the grief, physiologically, emotions only last about 90 seconds. And so if we truly give ourselves over, if we continue in that cycle of tears, what happens is we start to recycle. Now, have there been times in my life where I've literally needed to let it go and cry and let it process and cycle through me for sometimes 20, 30, 45, 60 minutes at a time? Yes. But typically, we can move through a little quicker. And we all need to have those big moments where we just let go and let it fully cycle. But, like the kind of day-to-day emotional processing that we do, we have to learn how to fully surrender to it so it can wash through and leave us clean. The soul would have no rainbow if the eyes had no tears. And this opportunity that we give ourselves over to that to become a more open, more connected version of ourselves, I think is absolutely what's possible here with deep reverence for the process, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your perspective. And I so appreciate your soulfulness and all the spirituality and that you bring to business. And I think that's one of the gifts I've received by having you as a mentor is really integrating that service that I, as a spiritual person coming from yoga traditions and ministerial traditions and all of these things where, money is sort of the root of all evil, or, it's like if you're poor and, that's somehow more spiritual. And I think in this path, I've understood that my business can be my service and my service can be my business. So on that note, before I know we have to wrap up because, we've had such a full conversation. I just want to make sure everybody knows how to stay in touch. And I want to just circle back to what you spoke to around containers and how important it is to have, one-on-one containers, whether that's friendships, mentors, therapists, coaches, to have that support with particular people. You brought that up, and to be really feeding those relationships in reciprocity, and then also to have community containers. So, whether you're listening to this and you're going through a major grief portal, or you're listening to this and you are a leader and you have your own business, or you've gone through any kind of grief initiation, I just want to make sure you know how to stay in touch with Sage and Women Rocking Business. And if you need some containers to, we can leave links in the chat, but will you just share with us how people can stay in your world? And I know that you've got, I've been to many of your 3-day virtual and live events. And I know you've got a hybrid where people can join actually in the physical, in-person flesh and on Zoom if they need to. That's coming up in September. Would you just share a little bit about that 3-day event? Because I will be there and I want to make sure that folks know about that.
Well, we're so excited. If you are a woman on a path of growing a business, maybe you're launching a business for the first time, or if you're a human who just resonates with a feminine way of doing things, it would be our honor to stay in touch with you. I have a podcast. You can check it out at my website, womenrockingbusiness.com. We have a season coming out all around the fierce feminine in business. It's going to be very powerful. And the 3-day event is a rock sales event that teaches you to rock sales and really rock the world with your gift. And whether you're just starting out growing a message-based business and you're not even sure what your message is, or whether you're a little further along and you're in love with the healing arts, or you want to be a mentor or a thought leader or a change maker, maybe you're already starting to grow a business. We have 3 days of helping you up-level your message, your marketing, and your money. Give yourself a raise. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on Facebook ads, and we learn so much about what's working on social media. And I love to geek out on how to help you get your message out in a shorter amount of time. I think women are so much the solution to so many of the world's problems right now. It's also just a container where you get to mastermind and brainstorm and connect with other powerful entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs, and to really up-level your own leadership and share the things that have been getting in the way, kind of like we started talking about today. So, when we're on a path of becoming a mentor and being in the personal development world, we also are re-mentoring and re-mothering and re-parenting and re-fathering ourselves. So I just want to thank you, Jenn, for the work that you're doing, because I just know what a huge mark you're making. You and I have talked about how grief really is like this untapped potential on the planet. And thank you so much for bringing your gifts. And if you have a gift in the way that you see Jenn, the one and only Reverend Jenn Cormier, has a gift, we would love to help you launch it. We are doing 90% off for friends of friends for this event. So Jenn will drop the link in the notes here to our Rock Sales retreat coming up. We would love to have you. And yeah, just thank you so much for being on the journey of becoming the best version of yourself. You can be the most open-hearted, the most available version of yourself that you can be, so that we can keep doing the right thing for this world, this planet, and for our brothers and sisters all over the world.
Thank you so much, Sage.
What an honor to be here.
What an honor to have you. Till next time, we'll put all those links in the chat so that people can stay in touch and come to the 3-day event and follow your podcast. I just so appreciate you.
Mwah.
Mwah. Much love.
Don't forget to hit subscribe so I can keep getting you weekly content to grow your business that is relevant, authentic, and effective, so you can get out there and shine your light and be the messenger that you're here to be, because your clients are waiting for you.